1. Medieval meme. The Lost Legend of Wade and the Preacher Who Used Pop Culture. 2. Unraveling the Mystery of the Song of Wade, a Medieval Epic Rediscovered. 1. Medieval meme. The Lost Legend of Wade and the Preacher Who Used Pop Culture. Imagine a medieval preacher dropping pop culture references in his sermon like a modern influencer. That's exactly what happened in the 12th century, when an anonymous cleric slipped fragments of a chivalric romance into his Latin sermon to captivate his audience. This fascinating discovery reveals how even 800 years ago, religious leaders used storytelling tricks we'd recognize today. But here's where it gets controversial. For 130 years, scholars might have completely misinterpreted the only surviving lines of a legendary lost tale about Germanic hero Wade. The story begins with Cambridge scholar M.R. James' 1896 discovery of 3 mysterious English verse lines buried in a Latin sermon manuscript, Peterhouse MS 255. These fragments, the sole surviving evidence of a vanished medieval narrative, reference Wade, a heroic figure from Germanic mythology. While we know this tale once existed through scattered references, most famously in Chaucer's Troilus and Chrysaor and the Merchant's Tale, its full story vanished from history. Chaucer's 16th-century editor Thomas Spate teasingly called Wade's exploits long and fabulous but frustratingly omitted details, leaving generations of scholars bewildered. Now, Cambridge researchers Seb Falk and James Wade have reignited the debate with a bold claim in the Review of English Studies. Previous translations radically misunderstood these fragments for over a century. Their fresh analysis centers on one explosive reinterpretation, changing elves to the wolves. Why does this single word matter so much? Because it flips our understanding of the lost works genre. If the original described wolves rather than elves, it strongly suggests Wade's story was a chivalric romance, think knights and courtly love, rather than a monster-filled Germanic epic. And this is the part most people miss. This tiny translation shift has massive implications for interpreting Chaucer's own Wade references. Consider the evidence. The sermon itself provides context clues. Dubbed the Humiliamini, a sermon, it uses animal metaphors to teach humility, comparing human flaws to adders, deceitfulness, lions, pride, pigs, gluttony, and now, in this new translation, wolves, plundering. Wolves reading fits this thematic pattern perfectly. This reinterpretation resolves puzzling Chaucer passages. In a Troilus and Chrysaor, Pandarus tells the tale of Wade to encourage romance, a purpose better served by a chivalric story than a monster saga. Similarly, the Merchant's Tale connects Wade's boat to marital deceit, a theme enhanced by viewing Wade as a romantic hero. Falk and Wade propose the sermon's author may be Alexander Neckham or an imitator, noting stylistic parallels. They also offer a compelling modern analogy. Just like a vicar quoting Black Eyed Peas at a wedding to seem relatable, this medieval preacher referenced Wade, a folkloric meme of his day, to engage listeners. But brace yourself for debate, not everyone will accept this translation. Could changing one word truly upend 130 years of scholarship? What if other interpretations exist? The researchers acknowledge their evidence is circumstantial, inviting robust academic discussion. And for fantasy fans, here's a delightful twist. J.R.R. Tolkien based his sky-sailing hero Eärendil on Wade, even naming his ship Guingelot, a clear nod to Thomas Spate's mentioned Guingelot. So what's your take? Do Falk and Wade's arguments convince you that medieval audiences knew Wade as a chivalric heartthrob rather than a monster fighter? Or does the Hell's version still hold mythic appeal? Share your perspective in the comments. This 800-year-old literary mystery needs fresh voices. 2. Unraveling the Mystery of the Song of Wade, a Medieval Epic Rediscovered. ****, a single mistake by a medieval scribe has sown centuries of confusion over a once famous saga, until now, when researchers finally cracked the code behind the error. ****. The Song of Wade, hardly as renowned as legendary epics like Gilgamesh, Beowulf, or King Arthur, offers a fascinating lesson in what can happen to a story that survives mostly through oral tradition rather than being committed to writing. This medieval tale once captivated audiences across England during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, even earning 2 nods from the great poet Geoffrey Chaucer. Yet today, it has almost entirely slipped from memory, with only a handful of fragments remaining. What's remarkable, and where things get really intriguing, is how just a couple of words, miscopied or mistranslated, can dramatically change our understanding of an entire narrative. Originating in the 12th century, the Song of Wade was thought to feature its hero wrangling with supernatural monsters. The sole surviving text was discovered nearly 130 years ago, nestled within a 13th-century Latin sermon that quoted a snippet of the saga in Middle English. Previously, the term Yiluse in this excerpt was interpreted as the elves, painting Wade's adventure as one filled with magical beings. But recent findings from scholars at the University of Cambridge turned this widely accepted view on its head. They argue that a transcription error by a medieval scribe, who mistakenly swapped to the W for a Y, led to a critical mistranslation. Rather than elves, the word should actually be read as wolves. Far from harmless mythical creatures, these wolves function allegorically to represent dangerous, oppressive men. Furthermore, what had been translated as the sprites in the excerpt should more accurately be sea snakes, pushing the story further into realistic, rather than otherworldly, territory. Their comprehensive analysis was published on July 15 in the Review of English Studies. This discovery reshapes how we view the entire Song of Wade, redirecting focus from fantastical monsters to real, worldly threats faced by the hero. Dr. Seb Falk, a historian of science and fellow at Cambridge's Girton College, explains that it challenges the old image of Wade as a parallel to Beowulf, a heroic monster slayer. Instead, Wade emerges more akin to knights of chivalric romance, such as Sir Launcelot or Sir Gawain, who embody ideals of honor, bravery, and courtly love. For centuries, experts have puzzled over why Chaucer mentioned the Song of Wade in his chivalric works. This new interpretation, positioning Wade as a courtly hero rather than a beast-fighting warrior, harmonizes better with Chaucer's references and opens the door to uncovering fresh layers of meaning within those texts. What makes this breakthrough even more compelling is that it's the first time the Song of Wade's English excerpt has been studied alongside the whole Latin sermon that citations it, notes Dr. James Wade, Associate Professor of English Literature at Girton College. Fun fact, despite sharing the same surname, he hasn't confirmed any direct relation to the hero Wade, though he leaves open the tantalizing possibility. It was the sermon's theme that unlocked the secret. Focused on humility, the sermon warns that some people behave like wolves, ruthless tyrants who seize whatever they want by force. This context helped the researchers spot that the original phrases, elves, and sprites, didn't fit well thematically. Their revised translation reads, some are wolves and some are adders, some are sea snakes that dwell by the water. There is no man at all but Hildebrand. With this wording, the imagery aligns perfectly with a moral lesson about dangerous human behaviors rather than mystical creatures. Dr. Wade emphasizes that this approach not only reinterprets the Wade legend itself but also changes our broader understanding of how medieval stories were adapted and retold across different cultural settings, including religious ones. Dr. Stephanie Trigg, an English literature professor from the University of Melbourne who was not involved in the study, underscores the challenges involved in paleography, the study of ancient handwriting. She reminds us that interpreting handwritten texts, especially vernacular English before standardized spelling and rules, can often be more art than exact science. She also praises the study for highlighting how unusual it was in the Middle Ages for a sermon to quote popular epics, underscoring that such references reveal much about medieval popular culture and piety, disrupting some traditional assumptions. Dr. Falk adds that the preacher who used the Song of Wade in his sermon clearly expected his audience to recognize it as a shared cultural reference, a kind of medieval meme. This insight offers a rare window into how popular literature resonated across different segments of society long ago. Now, does this mean the Song of Wade was a completely realistic tale? Not at all. While only snippets remain, other historical texts and local folklore depict Wade in ways that thrill fans of fantasy epics. For instance, one text credits Wade with slaying a dragon, 16th-century Yorkshire folklore described him as a giant, and some tales said his father was a giant while his mother was a mermaid. Fantasy and romance often mingled freely in medieval chivalric literature, where mythological elements and supernatural beings were staples, and the line between myth and romance was blurred. Realigning Wade as more of a courtly chivalric hero than a Dark Age monster fighter also clarifies puzzling references Chaucer made to Wade in his stories The Merchant's Tale and Troilus and Chryside. As Dr. Falk puts it, it's strange to imagine Chaucer evoking a gruesome warrior like Beowulf in those moments. Instead, a romantic hero fits the narrative context much better. Though the Song of Wade has mostly faded into historical obscurity, its mentions in sermons and canonical works like Chaucer's reveal that it was once a vital part of medieval England's common culture, even without a complete surviving text. By the 18th century, the story had vanished so thoroughly that nobody remembered it. That mystery contributes to its lasting fascination, the idea that something once well-known could suddenly slip into oblivion. What do you think? Does this take on the Song of Wade challenge your view of medieval literature? Was the hero's transformation from monster slayer to chivalric knight overdue? Or is there more to the story that we have yet to uncover? Join the conversation below and share your thoughts. Mindy Weisberger is a science journalist and media producer whose work has appeared in Live Science, Scientific American, and How It Works magazine. She is also the author of Rise of the Zombie Bugs, The Surprising Science of Parasitic Mind Control, Hopkins Press.